And I'll do the presentation of Mr. Glen Ford. Glen is the executive director of Black Agenda Report. He has had a long career as a radio host and commentator. In 1977, Glen Ford co-launched, produced, and hosted America's Black Forum, the first nationally syndicated black news interviews program on commercial television. In 1987, Ford wrapped it up, the first nationally syndicated hip-hop music show broadcast in 65 radio stations. Ford co-founded the Black Agenda Report. He is also the author of The Big Lie, an analysis of U.S. media coverage of the Grenada Invasion. Thank you and welcome again.
Thank you. Good morning. I always say power to the people. On this occasion, power to the people's lawyers and power to everybody who stands up to power. My remarks this morning, contrary to what I was told to do, will be a more general analysis of the U.S. assault on international law and some thoughts on the history of the United States and in international relations. I'm very honored to be a part of this conference on international law. In fact, it's awing, it's humbling to be surrounded by such committed people, such talented people who've been assembled to explore the question, justice for whom? That question has been a defining factor in much of African American political discourse throughout our history. Our collective answer to that question, justice for whom, has for the most part, I believe, been much more inclusive than simply give justice to black people in the United States. African American sentiment has always tended to the universal, that is, justice for everybody. The depravity of American racism, which declared that every white person is inherently superior to any black person, tends to make African Americans find common cause with other people around the world, and not just in Africa. Our experience with white people in our own society has led many black Americans to identify with other peoples that were colonized and oppressed by the imperial nations. Our own conditions of life have endowed black people in the United States with at least an elemental sense of solidarity with the oppressed in the world. I didn't come to Canada just to sing the praises of my own ethnic group, but I believe that this background does have some great bearing on the issues of human rights and of international law. The point, I think, is that there are two Americas, a black America and a white America, and a very swiftly growing Hispanic or Latino America that is positioned in many ways between that black and white America. I think we need to have an understanding of how the American polity behaves domestically and in the world, and not because the United States is such an interesting place, but because it is the most dangerous nation on the face of the earth. And we can't speak of all the challenges that face the world without examining the nature and the history of the principal adversary of global peace and justice, and that is the U.S. The United States, which played such a central, pivotal role in delineating the rights of nations and the rights of humankind in the years after World War II, now methodically dismantles the edifices of international law. What we are witnessing in the world today, and at a very, very quick pace, is much more than an aggressive brick by brick dismantling of international law, one Geneva Accord at a time. It is instead a kind of paving over of the foundational principles of international conduct, respect for the sovereignty and rights of nations. That is fundamental. We cannot speak of international law without respect for the sovereignty of nations. If nations as nations have no rights, then peoples can have no rights, and individuals can have no rights as persons. It's all of a piece. And when you yank at the thread, the human rights fabric begins to unravel. And the United States is pulling very hard on that thread. It's pulling as hard as it can. It's trying to bring down the whole structure of law and to substitute imperial fiat in its place. The American empire, which is ruled by finance capitalists who create nothing but seek to monetize everything, no longer has use for international law. The empire is quite ill, and it's not interested in competing with the developing world in terms of trade. It really is not interested in that pursuit anymore. Instead, it foments instability because instability in the world plays to the United States military advantage, its vast military advantage. The United States spends more on weapons of war than all the rest of the world combined, and if you add the NATO allies of the United States to the U.S. spending, it accounts for 70% of the military expenditures in the world. So that is the imperial trump card, not trade. The rulers of the United States make their money through financial manipulation, through derivatives, prestidigitation, some kind of magic up there in this multi-trillion-dollar digital derivative world. And they make money by the coercive powers of the world's most lethal military machine. The empire's rulers prefer to steal. They tried to steal Iraq. They did steal Libya. They would like to steal Iran. And they have probably stolen Syria's chance for a future as a cohesive nation. They stole Haiti's sovereignty, and they have no intention of giving that back. That which they cannot steal, they plunge into chaos. In Africa, they do both of these things. They steal amid the chaos that they and their proxies have created, for example, in the Congo. 6 million people have died, and the law has not touched the main perpetrators of this genocide, who, of course, are in the service of the empire, and that is why they have impunity. This bacchanal of criminality, criminality as state policy, cannot coexist with anything that resembles international law. And so the law has to go, and it has to go quickly and by imperial decree. We're not talking about the old story of imperial relative impunity, the impunity that the larger powers have always enjoyed. The United States has habitually, throughout its history, ignored and trampled on international law. It periodically commits or abets genocides, and it is constantly engaged in multiple crimes against humanity. However, this is a different period. The current imperial project is different. Barack Obama, a politician who is in service to the oligarchs at home and abroad, is not content to merely ignore international legalities, as the United States has always done. Obama is bold enough and has behaved arrogantly enough to substitute an insidious doctrine in the place of both international law and United States law.